advice I think we can all learn from at any given time in our lives, and it's all about boosting confidence, no matter what age you are. Dr. Karyn Gordon is here with some great tips for you. You can say that these tips are universal, whether you're a young person, an older person, wherever you are in your life. I think it's a great skill to be able to know how to boost your own confidence.
Absolutely. So whether or not you're 8 or you're 80, the exact same strategies apply. And when I started practicing exactly 20 years ago this year, this was when I first started specializing with young people. The issue of confidence was like the most prevalent topic that actually came up. And so I started doing all this interesting research on what was the research around confidence and how does that actually impact decision making. And there's so much amazing research on the correlation between confidence and decision making. But what I wanted to do is really figure out how can you build it, because we know you can build it. So these tips really are on how can you build it for whatever age we are. It applies to all of us.
Good stuff. Okay, what's the first thing we need to do to start building that?
Tip number 1 is understand the power of confidence. So confidence is part of what they call emotional intelligence. It is 100% learned.
That's great.
It's good.
That's great news.
It's great news. And a lot of people think it's genetic. It is not genetic. It is learned. Okay, we learn from a lot of different places. I find that the most prevalent place where we actually learn is the same-gendered parent.
Oh, same-gendered parent.
Same-gendered parent.
Okay.
There's exceptions to that for sure, but I certainly have found in my own practice that that is the most, the best predictor. And we pick up all kinds of different things from our parents about how they treat themselves, treat other people. But tip number 1 is really understanding the power of confidence. That when people actually have higher confidence, they are more likely to take risks and to get them. They're more courageous. They're more gentle and kind to themselves. They tend to choose partners that treat them well. They tend to choose friends that treat them well. So the power of it is that when somebody has confidence and not arrogance.
So let's talk about the difference between the two.
I know everyone's like, I'm not sure about this. Okay, we're not talking about arrogance. We're talking about confidence. So confidence is a sense of, I like who I am. I like a lot of things who I am. I'm not perfect, but I like who actually I am. Arrogance is kind of like, I'm better than you. Okay,
and that's
I am better than you, and that's the difference. And so with confidence, there's a sense of also humility as well. Okay,
so key.
They're so key. And so a person with confidence, they'll realize, I've got a lot of things I like about myself, but I also fault, and I'm okay about those faults, or I'm going to work on those faults.
I'm working on it.
I'm going to work on it. So the piece that's different is that humility piece. So tip number 1 is to realize how powerful confidence is. So this could be a game changer in terms of the decisions you're making in life. It could be a game changer in terms of the path that your life takes. Which is why I think it's a project that is worth investing in. Figuring out how to make that confidence, build it up. So your next tip, pay attention to what you tell your best friend. Pay attention to what you tell your best friends. So years ago, I remember hearing, I don't know if it was on a show or I read an article, something around become your own best friend. And I had no idea what the person was talking about. What do you mean, become your own best friend? What does that mean? What does that mean? It just seems so cliche. It's kind of like fluffy, right? And as the speaker was actually talking about it, she was going on about, when people have a sense of confidence, they have really become their own best friend. Okay, in the sense that when you pay attention to what people tell their best friends, what do? We're kind, we're loving, we build them up, we're encouraging, we're gracious, we'll challenge them. And so really when you think about it, somebody who actually has a sense of confidence, they have actually become their own best friend. So the same things that they would actually tell their friends are the same things that they would actually tell themselves. So those good positive messages that you need you have to be careful how you talk to yourself. You have to be very careful how you talk to yourself. And a lot of people, they don't do that. We become loving to everybody else, but when you stop and you listen to what we tell ourselves, we become our own self-bully. It's like all of a sudden I'm a loser, I'm stupid, I can't do this, why can't I do this, I'm a failure. And all of a sudden, but when we're telling our friends, we're like, oh, you're amazing, good for you, you're courageous, and you really listen to it, it's like, oh my goodness, it's like two totally different people. It's true. And in our center, we actually get people to write down what are the things you tell your friends and what are the things you tell yourself. And it is literally shocking when you actually see those two lists kind of side by side. Why do we do that? Well, I think we're just nicer to other people, or it's easier. We're harder on ourselves. We're totally hard on ourselves. Maybe and we're much more, when we give advice to our friends, we're much more objective. We can see it from the whole picture. We can see the courage it took to go for something, and that, failure is part of the process. When we're in it, we become so subjective. And so that's why that saying about becoming your own best friend is so powerful. We're actually developing a whole one-day course on helping people to do this, because you can change it. You just have to learn how to do it. That's amazing news. I love the fact that we can change it. You can have some control over the situation. So what do we need to focus on? So you want to really, I call it the best friend technique, and what it is, when I actually stopped and I studied, people who I think give really great advice. And actually, I made a list, this is years ago, but maybe 15 years ago, I made a list of people in my life that I thought were really great at giving advice. And there's a lot of people that give advice. There's very few that give, I think, really good advice, right? There's a difference.
That's true.
So what I did is I actually made a list of people who actually, I think, give really great advice. And what are the variables that are consistent with all those pieces? And there was 5 criteria that I found. Number 1 is they always spoke the truth. Always spoke the truth. So if somebody does not look good on you, they're not going to say that looks great on you. They'll be like, well, maybe why don't we try something a little bit different, right?
Yes.
You know, so you want to make sure that you're speaking the truth. Number 2 is that they're loving. So they speak the truth, but in a loving spirit. Number 3 is they get a person to focus on what they can control.
Absolutely.
They get a person to accept what they cannot control, and that they're specific. So when we give advice, when you really pay attention and you listen to really people who are really great at giving advice to others and who are also become their own best friend and have this beautiful sense of confidence, really what they're doing is they're giving themselves that kind of messaging. They're telling them so, and so part of it is to really pay attention. What am I telling my friends? What am I telling myself? And making sure that it's these 5 criteria. Because it's very empowering.
It is.
And we can all control what we tell ourselves.
We can. It's actually almost one of the few things we can control. That's what you have fully control. You have no control over what people say about you, think about you.
You preach it, sister. You preach it. Yes, we are on the same page.
As a matter of fact, what people say about you, and I say this to myself all the time as someone who works on television, it's actually none of my business. Because it has nothing to do with who I am. So it's none of my business. You can think what you want.
And you cannot control it. And
I can't control it.
And that's why putting focus on other people and with what other people think about us, it is a waste of energy and time because we cannot control it.
But it's a message that has to be repeated because that's certainly learned behavior. It needs to be repeated, and we need to always tell ourselves that. I know I have to always make sure and fix the messages I'm telling myself. I do it all the time.
But you're aware of it, right? You're
very aware of it. When I get into that hole, it's like, okay, what am I telling myself?
So you become your own best friend.
Yeah, I try. I'm a pretty good friend.
Yeah, you're good. You see, well, listen, you're with yourself your whole life, right? You're with yourself your whole life. You might as well be a good friend,
Might as well like yourself.